Yeah. So like I was saying, you can add a connection. So for example, I will be using a Microsoft Excel file as my dataset. So I can just open that here. So I have already selected the 2018, this the 2018 SHCC ADAX data file. So like you can simply click on open. Once you've done that, it will start showing up in this sidebar here. You can see that it says tables and then my dataset name, right? So I can select this and simply drag it to this workflow area. So everyone is clear on how you can add a dataset to Tableau Prep? Any questions about this? Okay, great. So once you have your data added here, you can sort of explore your data set in a like more visually appealing manner, I guess. So here you can see the different columns the data contains, like country, attack date, attack type, health workers killed. So if you just like hover over this, you can read the full thing. Total health worker killed, total health worker injured, and so on. So now, as you can see in this data, there are a lot of null values, right? So like Monjavia was talking about in the Python tutorial, if you have a lot of null values or if you have some outlier points, so it can sort of mess up your visualization. So you would want to identify them and get rid of them, right? So to do that, we can simply click here on view and clean data. Once you do that, now your data is available to you and you can manipulate this data directly. So for example, I have country here. Sorry, yeah, someone has a question. Uh, Someone said something like, do they have a question? Okay, I guess we'll move forward if there are no questions. So for example, our data set, currently the data set we are working with is a data set on which basically describes the attacks on different healthcare facilities across the world, right? So here we can explore this country column, for example. Here we can see that there are many attacks in Afghanistan, 98 of them in 2018. But in countries like Egypt, there is only one. Ethiopia, there is only one. In Pakistan, there are 11. Syria, there are again 257 attacks. So when we are doing a visualization, we might want to focus on particular countries and regions where the number of are higher, right? It doesn't make sense to visualize the data for Egypt, which has only one attack. So to identify these countries with maximum number of attacks, I can just click here and it will sort the country column for me. So I just use this option here, sort. So as you can see, this OPT is some occupied Palestinian territories. So they had 308 attacks, Syria had 257, Afghanistan had 98. So by doing this, I could identify the primary regions I should focus on. So far with me, like, are you guys able to follow? Yes, no, anything in the chat? Okay, good. So for example, in this scenario, we can maybe focus on Palestine, this occupied Palestinian territories. Then moving on to removing null values. So I want you to notice this thing like, okay, so currently OPT has 308 data points. You can read here that it says 308 rows are there for OPT country. What I'll do now is I'll go to, so for example, here you can see that total health workers killed. So it says that 86% of the rows, which is like 841 rows, are null values here. So this is something I do not want in my data set. So what I can do is I can select null value. And once I've selected this, you can see that values in the other columns are also being highlighted as blue. So I can scroll back and then if I go here and read the country part again. So for Palestine, out of the 308 rows, 305 are highlighted, which basically means in Palestine, 305 rows have total health workers killed as null. And also, like one more small point I would like to mention here is So basically, this total health workers killed is a numerical value, right? It should be a numerical value, like one worker killed, 10 workers killed, something like that, correct? So does it make sense for me to just simply remove all the rows with null values here? Or do you think I should do something else? Like, anyone want to take that question? Like anyone want, like, did you guys understand the question? Okay, yeah. So one person says set them to zero. So that is actually a good idea. So basically here, what might have happened was that I'll open the Excel. So maybe while filling the data into the Excel, they would have just left it as blank or something like that, instead of going ahead and filling a zero there purposefully. So indeed, like this is sort of a decision which you as the visualizer of the like I don't know what to say. You as the data visualizer, I guess. Okay. So you need to take this decision whether you want to remove the null values or replace them with some value like zero, or maybe like in some certain scenarios you might want to consider taking the mean of all the values and then using the mean as the like sort of filler value. So does that make sense? Okay. So for example, I want to replace this null value with zero. So what I can do is I can right click, I can click on edit value, and I can just put zero here. So what this will do is internally in the Excel file, it will change all null values to zero now. Similarly, we can look at other columns as well. So again, here total health workers injured. Again, you can manipulate null values. If instead of imputing a different value for null, so here I just imputed a value zero for null values. I could want to remove them completely as well. So to do that, I can right click and just say exclude. So that will remove all the rows in my data set which had null value for the total health workers kidnapped column. So there are corresponding functions in pandas you can use if you are going to be doing the assignment in Python. So like that is completely fine. And it is also okay to like do the pre-processing in one thing and the assignment visualization task in another. So you can choose to pre-process your data in Python and visualize using Tableau, or the other way around as well. Okay, so like for pre-processing, that is mostly it. Those are majorly the functionalities you would be using for the first assignment at least. And then to finally export the data, what you can do is simply click this plus icon here after the cleaning stage, go to output, and now you have your output here. So what you can do is you can specify a location where you want to save this output, and output type, you might want to change it to CSV or XLSX. Okay. So if I want to save it as a CSV file, I'll choose CSV. Sorry, is there a question? Someone was trying to say something, I think, or if not, we'll move forward. Okay, so like I was saying, you can select the output format, Excel or CSV. Those would be the easiest to work with. And then simply select create table here, which will, every time you run the flow, it will create a new table and you can click on run flow. So it says that, okay, export has happened. And if I just go to this location, so I have my output CSV file here. So you can see for this column, for null values, we had imputed using zero value, right? So all these have been changed to zero. Whichever, like at which cell there was null earlier, now it's zero. The other values remain unchanged. Okay. Any questions about Tableau prep? pre-processing the data? Any other questions like how, like what kind of pre-processing you need to do or something like that? If you have a question, you can unmute and speak. Okay, so since there are no questions, we'll move forward. I'll close Tableau prep now and open Tableau. I think this will take a, okay, fine, it open. So again, similar to how we were working with Tableau prep, when you open Tableau, it gives you an option to connect a data source in this sidebar here. So you can go ahead and choose Excel again, navigate to the directory where your data is placed. Okay, so like we'll try with a different data this time for another year. So now I've opened the SHCC data for 2021. Again, see, similar to how we were working earlier with Tableau Prep, we have a table here in the sidebar, 2021 SSCC incident data. I'll again drag and drop it to this workspace here. And once I've done that, it will give me an option here saying sheet one. So I've just told Tableau that this is the data set I want to work with. And now I'll navigate to that sheet. So sheet is like similar to how you have an Excel sheet. You can have different sheets inside the same file, right? So when I go to this sheet, on the right hand side in the sidebar, I can see all the different columns I have in my data set. So you have country, you have total health workers arrested, assaulted, injured, kidnapped, killed, and so on. So now I want to visualize some of this data. Now Tableau is very smart. So what it will do is I'll give it two columns and it will try to figure out on its own what kind of a visualization should it generate. So for example, if I give one of the columns as country and the second column as, okay, so I'll show how I did that. So I just dragged country from the sidebar and near the top it says columns and rows. So I placed country in columns. And for rows, maybe go ahead with total health workers killed. Okay, one second. Just give me a second. Yeah. Okay, so on the right side of the screen, you have another widget kind of application. Here, the show me button is there. So if you click it, it will give you some suggested visualizations which you can do based on your data. So this column basically had names of different countries, right? Afghanistan, China, Pakistan, and all. So what Tableau does is internally it maps those country names to the latitude and longitude values of the countries. So that is what is happening here. So if I just zoom in, so for country Mali, say total health workers killed is one. Maybe yeah. So for Af Afghanistan, it seems like the value was null or something. That is why it's not showing up. Or okay, so see, like I just blindly went ahead and visualized this data in this manner where, so like, do you understand what is happening in this visualization? There is something very wrong with this visualization. Can anyone point that out? Like anyone has any idea that what is wrong with this visualization? Yes, so Tahir says that each quantity of each number of deaths is in a different map, which is correct. Yeah, this shouldn't happen, right? So this is basically saying that whatever countries had null as the value, they are being plotted in this map. Whichever countries had the value as one for total health workers killed is in this map. two in this map, three in this map, and like everything is being plotted separately, which is something like it is okay, but like this is not what you would expect out of a good visualization, right? This is very difficult to interpret and read. So instead of that, maybe we can switch to a different visualization type. But okay, this also, just give me a second, right? I'll check. Okay, so sorry about that. It's just that like I haven't used Tableau in last 10 months or something like that, so I messed up a bit. So yeah, what were we discussing earlier? Yeah, I'll just start over. Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll start by plotting all the countries on a map basically. So this just identifies the different countries and maps them using the latitude and longitude. So now I have all the countries marked, and I would want to do something like heat map kind of thing basically. So if the number of health workers killed in USA is more than those killed in Brazil, so I would want the color for USA to be more opaque compared to Brazil's. So what I can do is I'll drag this number of health workers killed field and I'll put it to color. So color is basically a channel, right? Ma'am would have covered channels in class. And yeah. So what I did was earlier when I just simply dragged and dropped number of total health workers killed to color, it was considering it to be a discrete value, meaning there are only some values possible like 0, 1, 5, and 13, for example. So it mapped each value to a color unique to that value. So for example, earlier it mapped orange to 1 and like similarly other colors to other colors. I don't know why it's not displaying it. It should display something like country Chile and then total health workers killed, some number should be there, but yeah, so basically it's mapping orange to 1, red to 2, null to blue, and 5 to yellow, green to 4, and so on. If the meeting ends, I'll just share a new link. So here we can change it to a different color palette. So for example, I want that effect of having more opaqueness compare for a higher number of health worker skill, right? So for that, I'll use a continuous color scale. So did ma'am discuss discrete color scales and continuous color scales in class? Okay, so very briefly, I'll go over that. Basically, a discrete color map or a discrete color scale is So for example, in this scenario, you have five values, one, two, three, four, five, and a null value. You are mapping each value to a unique color. So for example, if tomorrow a new value comes 1.5, you do not know what color it maps to, right? You have the color for one, you have the color for two, but not for 1.5. So this is a discrete color map. If instead we switch to a continuous color map, so this is similar to that. So it's a continuous color map. It just displays it in a discretized manner because it can't display an infinite number of colors. And if you assign it, so see, for example, one, the color for assigned to four is darker than the color assigned to one, right? You can choose this, apply, and click OK. So, so I think like this, maybe this data file is not that good because most of the colors looks the same, right? So ideally it should look something like this. So this is for 2020. So in 2020, you can clearly see like some of the African countries like Dominican Republic and if I try and zoom in here, yeah, Dominican Republic of Congo, Libya have a very large number of health workers who are being killed compared to the neighboring countries. I think you have Syria here, which has a high number of health workers being killed, Afghanistan, right? So this would be something which is considered as a good visualization. I'm sorry, I understand that this was a bit confusing, but like did it make some sense or did it not? Like, can someone just speak and let me know? Anyone like I understand that it was a bit rushed and confusing, but yeah, if you want me to go over it again, I'll try. So can we move forward then? Okay, Shreyas has no doubts. Like if anyone else has any doubts, let me know. Okay, so we'll move forward. Also, one more thing. So currently I'm using a data file which I did not pre-process, right? So you can see that where it says, so for example, for the column total health workers kidnapped, next to the column name, it says ABC. That ABC basically means that the data type of this column is a string, but that is something which is happening because of the way Tableau reads the data. But in actual, like in reality, we know that total health workers kidnapped or killed, it should be a number, right? So you can just select the ABC marker here and change the data type itself. So you can change it to number whole or number decimal based on your requirement. So for example, for country, see it automatically says that it's a string, but because it's the country's name. But here you can see if you go to geographic role, you can find out that this string corresponds to a country or a region. So for example, some of your data sets would have area codes for US or zip codes or postal codes. So you might want to use this particular feature in Tableau. Okay, so that was one type of visualization you can do. Other than that, okay, maybe I'll try this. Put country. I think the meeting is about to end. I'll just create a new link and share that. Just give me 5 minutes.